and welcome to another amazing author chat, this time with Meg Eden as I slap myself in the face with a book. My goodness.
Oh no.
And of course with our special host, Laurie Forest, the author of The Black Witch.
Hello.
All right, so of course, as usual, you guys can add your comments to the comments below or share them on Twitter, and I will find them. Just make sure to tag me. And I got my phone here and my iPad that's slowly dying. And Meg, let us know a little bit about you. So, is your name actually Meg Eden, or is that author pen name?
So that is my maiden name. I got married, so I have a longer name now. But this is 7 letters. It's easier to not botch. So
I love that. It sounds like a character name.
Yeah.
It's a great name.
Thank you. Yeah, I like it. I guess I got used to it.
And I just realized there's a computer inside the crystal ball. I never noticed that when I was making up the banner.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out what's even on the screen, but it kind of keeps going in and in. Yeah, we had fun with the cover. I love that I got to work with my editor to make the cover the way I wanted it to be.
Can you hold it up?
And it's I'm actually old enough to know about MS-DOS, so that makes me so old.
I know, right? Time goes by.
And of course, Allie is here. She says hello. Hello, Allie.
Hi, Allie.
Right, so tell us a little bit about you and your titles.
Yeah, so my name is Meg Eden. I'm a creative writing instructor. I'm a poet and a novelist. My debut novel was Post-High School Reality Quest. And I have a poetry collection that just came out called Drowning in the Floating World. Yeah, that's mostly me. I don't know what else to say. I can tell you all my hobbies, my weird hobbies, but I mainly write and I teach writing, and that's mostly my life.
Okay, Post-High School Reality Quest. It's incredible. If you like books that are just like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is the closest thing I can think of, even though this is completely different. But just that type of completely original, very smart, very funny fantasy, you'll love this. If you want to read something completely different, and I guess I gotta ask Meg, the gaming thing. I'm not a gamer, because I think if I got into it, I'd be completely addicted to it. But
it is so addicting.
But if you're not a gamer, do not let that keep you from reading this book, because I loved this book. It was almost like, in some ways, kind of like I'm gonna date myself, like the Choose Your Own Adventure books of yore. A little bit like that. Meg, can you just talk a little bit about your inspiration for the book, your involvement in gaming, and really maybe the games that inspired, the types of games that inspired this book?
Yeah. So games have been a big part of my life most of the time growing up. My husband and I both speak at academic gaming conferences and panels talking about how games work. So I'm really interested in them as a concept. I was really what inspired this book was these, what are they called? Action Castle. Vince, what is that? What are those called? The Parsley games?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which are these? I'm trying to figure out how to describe it because it's so niche. It's basically a live video game with people where somebody is the computer or the text parser, and they lead you through the game, and you make verbal choices. So the parser will be like, "You are in a village. There is a fountain. Exits are north or east." And then you say, "I'm going to climb up a tree." And then the text parser is like, "You climbed up a tree and you're dead now. Thanks for playing."
Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So those originate from text adventure games, which are the olden day video games before there was videos and visual capacity. But these Parsley games were kind of like an in-person interactive way of playing these. And my friends were in improv, so they really had fun being the text parser and being super sassy. And one of those friends was like, "You should write a novel that's like a text adventure." And Laura, you've probably heard this too, where a bunch of people give kind of unsolicited writing advice, or they're like, "You should do this thing," and you're kind of like, "Okay, sure." And so it kind of passed through. And then I got strep a million times in a row one year. And so I was bedridden and blah, and playing video games. And that idea came back, and I just started playing with it because it's all in second person. You're thinking like you are doing this. And it was interesting. Like I'd never done that before, and I became addicted. It was kind of like I was playing a game. And I was really channeling the sassy text parser voice that my friends would have when we were playing. And because I'm bad at plot, that created structure for me because it created conflict. So you've got this text parser saying, this is what you should do. And you've got players saying, well, I don't want to do that. Then there's instant tension and things can go wrong. So it just became addictive and fun to do that. And then next thing you knew, I had a book. So
it was crazy. There's even some parts in the book. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but there's almost like a do-over type of thing you can do. But this is like if you could actually do like a random do-overs, and she uses this for the funniest effects in this book. Let's talk about narwhals. Where did your inspiration for?
So I've got to say, I liked narwhals before they were cool. I'm trying to remember where that actually originated. I just remember it was like, because now narwhals are kind of mainstream, right? Like you can go into Five Below or wherever.
No one's ever used them the way you use them here. And Jessica, you got to read this book just to be in on the narwhal joke. Everybody watching this, you've got to read this book just to be in on our narwhal stuff here.
But it's funny because I was into narwhals as a fun thing, and then in older versions of these characters, I was interested in the idea of the narwhal as like a metaphor. And I did all this research on narwhals and how they function. And I was like, this is like a metaphor for being a geek. And like I had this whole like weird poetic thing, and it was like way too on the nose as poets can be, being too clever. But like I feel affinity with narwhals, and I was like into them. And so like that still remained, that there was still kind of that affinity between the main character and narwhals, and I couldn't get that out of the draft. So yeah.
It was one of the fun. I mean, there's some parts of this book that are some of the funniest things I have ever read.
Oh,
I was reading this. I was actually laughing out loud. I was like, "What are you reading?"
That's a good question to ask when reading this. What are you reading?
I don't usually laugh out loud when I read funny things, but it's very funny.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
I do that all the time. So your book, of course, is about gaming. What is your favorite game to play?
This depends on my mood. I really like puzzle games, and I really like tactics games. I like solving problems, and I think that connects with being a writer. I love revising and figuring out how to fix stuff, and so I do that in games too. I got into, during quarantine, a huge binge of Legend of Zelda: Link Between Worlds, which is a super, super fun game, highly recommended, where it's, you guys know, have you guys heard about Legend of Zelda games, like Link, stuff like that? This one is really fun because you're just given all these different tools, and you're thrown into a world and puzzles to solve, and there's nobody really telling you what to do. You just try your different tools. And so I just had so much fun because I can't really go very far outside. So I was just exploring that world and playing with my grappling hook and boomerang and all that. And it was just, that's so much fun.
You said that was Link's Awakening?
Link Between Worlds.
Oh, Link Between Worlds. So.
Yeah. I haven't played Link's Awakening, but.
Yeah, I had one of them that was on my Switch like a while back ago.
Yeah, they have a remake of Link's Awakening.
Yeah, and they have like a little chibi one.
Yes. Yeah, it looks so cute.
Laurie, what did you say?
I was going to say, you're extremely eclectic. You've got several poetry books out. And then you have, your YA novel. You've got, some other ones might be coming down the road. When you teach creative writing, I'm wondering, are you focusing on one genre or another?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It depends on what I'm teaching. I teach a lot of intro to creative writing, so I'm supposed to cover quite a bit of ground. I want to make sure that they know how to do fiction and poetry, and everyone wants to do fiction. People usually come in and go, I don't want to write poems. That sounds gross and weird. but I really want to do stories. So I make them do poetry first. Like, you got to survive the poetry. And 90% of the students come out and go, oh, poetry isn't as bad as I thought. And I actually kind of like it. So whenever they say that, I'm like, I win as a teacher. That's what I want to hear. But I do actually briefly talk about video games and podcasts too, because I want students to be able to think about how writing isn't everything we do. And there's a lot of interesting ways you can apply writing craft and learn from things like video games for writing craft.
I think poetry is one of the most difficult forms of writing, actually. And some of my favorite writers are actually, they're poets also. I don't know if you've read the Pellamore series by Alison Cogan.
No, not yet.
I guess she's a pretty well-known poet in Australia, and she brings that poetic sensibility into her writing. And her fantasy landscapes, the way she describes them, it is so poetic that it's some of the most gorgeous writing I've ever read. But I think poets actually are some of the best writers.
Well, they work different muscles. So it's like going to the gym. Like, I do poetry to kind of think about the details and kind of be in a moment and use language in interesting ways and slow down. And then fiction I use to kind of create tension and learn how to raise the stakes and stuff like that. So they all work different muscles. And so I like being able to do multiple things. Wow. And they fit different moments too. Like right now, in part because of the quarantine, in part because I'm in post-editing exhaustion, I'm trying a middle grade novel and verse. And so that's so much fun, trying to mix both of those together, of whatever, about poetry and fiction. And it's so much fun, and it's so cathartic, and I'm loving it.
Cool.
So how different was it writing and publishing a fiction story versus the poetry?
Yeah, that's a good question. The processes are really different. Poetry, it's more depressing, but it's more straightforward. Usually you just kind of do it, or you enter the contest lottery of spending money, sending your stuff to publishers, and maybe 1 in 1,000 you'll get published. But you don't really, you don't need agents. You don't really, it's just, you really do it all on your own. And as somebody that really likes having control, I've kind of liked the poetry world for that reason, because I really just do everything. My fiction journey has been insane. I've had 2 agents. I got my first agent when I was in high school. This book I ended up selling on my own. Neither of my agents sold it for me. And so fiction, there's a lot of more avenues, I think, than poetry, because you can publish with a smaller press and work directly with them, or you can go with an agent and go with a larger press. Yeah. So it's, yeah, they're similar and different.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Sounds like
it takes a lot of stubbornness. Yeah.
Right. So how many covers did you go through for this book?
So my editor sent me, my editor, Bob, he runs like the entire imprint. So he was my editor. He was also my cover designer and everything, which was really cool, because then Bob and I were super tight and on the same page. So he sent me a couple mock-ups at the very beginning of a couple ideas he had. And then and then we kind of worked together and we built what was my ARC cover. And then we tweaked that a little bit for the final cover. So officially I had 2 covers. Unofficially, maybe 3 or 4.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But it was fun because he had read the book, of course, and loved the book. And I was able to contribute what I wanted for cover. I wanted it to look like old box art and have a nostalgia factor, so that when you saw it, if you were into that kind of thing, you'd probably like what's inside. And so I was happy that I got to voice that working with him.
That's nice, because I know a lot of people don't get a lot of input for their covers. It's just like, okay, this is what you're getting.
I think there were some people in our group. Yeah, and I think there were some people in our group that they were like, hey, I just discovered my cover by Googling my book today. Surprise.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. Laurie, what was your cover journey like? Was it always the one that it's now for each of the books, or?
Well, The Black Witch had a totally different cover. It was like a blue stained glass type of thing. And you know, I mean, I didn't know a lot of anything about covers, so I would have liked anything they gave to me. I liked it a lot. And Barnes and Noble, you didn't like it. They felt like it was not a really marketable cover, so they
Noble.
they actually, you know, really requested that the cover be changed. So then they came back. An in-house artist came back with the beautiful feather, and the minute I saw that cover, I knew that they had something special. So it was not the original cover, though.
Interesting.
So do you have any like prints or anything of the like original cover that
I do. I'll send it to you. It's
I want to see.
definitely, yeah, I'll send it to you both. It's very different. It's stained glass. It's blue stained glass with trees, and
That sounds so pretty though.
it is. But I love the cover that they chose.
Like every time, I know that we've talked about this, where like every time somebody says they had to get a new cover or a new title or something, it's always Barnes and Noble. It's always Barnes and Noble's fault.
They're right.
So mean.
They're right. I'm grateful.
Yeah.
I'm grateful.
They're so mean.
Yeah, but I love the colors on Meg's cover, and I love how it kind of conveys that when you read this book, you get ready. You're going to fall into a completely alternate universe, and you know, fasten your seatbelt because it is. It's an incredibly funny ride.
I was so excited because like the things for the banners, I have not been able to use those computer ones like for any of these shows because it's usually fantasy or contemporary. You can't really use those with that. So I was
like, great job.
Yeah, I loved that. It really made it come alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jessica, you know, I was thinking when we were talking about having Meg on the show, you know, you read so many books. You read. I mean, there's just so many, and you must over time, like, you know, you encounter the same tropes over and over. Not that tropes are, you know, bad. I mean, if they're done well, I mean, it's great. But this book is
somebody's love triangle that is like killing me.
This book is completely different, and it's very rare that I encounter a completely different thing. It's kind of like Laini Taylor's books are completely different. Meg's book is like nothing you've ever read before. I guess that's why I keep coming back to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because that's like nothing else. And her books are like nothing else.
Oh, thank you, Laurie.
Yeah. Which is very impressive.
I try and use that as kind of my pitch if I'm at cons and people are looking at it. I'm like, you probably won't find another book like that.
Not find another book like this. Yeah, it's so good.
Thank you.
Not a gamer, but loved it.
One of my favorite reviews was from a guy who was like, he's from Australia, so he wasn't familiar with American stuff. He was older, so he didn't really know anything about college culture, and he didn't know anything about video games. But he nailed so much about what the book is about, and that made me so happy. Because my goal is that it wouldn't just be like, oh, you have to be a gamer to read it. But if you're a gamer, you appreciate it. You know, you'll appreciate certain little Easter eggs.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Yeah. Once upon a time, before my big computer is now obsolete for that, we used to sit down and play, oh God, for hours and hours and hours. World of Warcraft.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, games are so great because you can, if you make a mistake, you can turn it off and restart. And Laurie, you said that those mechanics kind of come into the story. And I mean, it was just kind of like that what if I could, you know, redo stuff? What if I could respawn? Like, it's kind of a nice little thought.
You know, there's so many things I want to say, but I'll give spoilers away. There's one scene in particular with the duo, but you know what I'm talking about. Never seen anything like it.
Sorry, I was trying to like repost it and let everybody know that we were live. I feel so like seriously today. I feel so unprepared for this show because I had just gotten home because we got tied up at work.
Oh yeah.
So Meg, are you doing a lot of your teaching online these days?
I am teaching a little bit online. Ironically, I had kind of taken this semester off because of other stuff. I'm finished editing a project. So I am teaching a few things, and I'm teaching some online one-day workshops and stuff on Zoom. I'm going to kind of see how that goes. But yeah, I already really like teaching online, and sounds like for the rest of the year, it's probably going to be only online, and I'm fine with that. I like teaching online.
So I'm very curious about the poetry community. Like,
Yeah.
do you have your own online groups? Do you have your own groups that you get together with in your community?
Yeah, so there's a few open mic series and event series that I try and go with. I feel like I have a pretty strong connection and community with like local poets, maybe even more so than with the YA community. I'm in an SCBWI chapter for YA, and SCBWI is amazing for anybody that's doing Kidlit, and I love our chapter. But yeah, I guess there's the poetry community just is so I don't know. There's nothing really to be gained from poetry financially, and I've been in the poetry community for a really long time, so they can really feel like family. And I feel like with this last book that came out, there was so much encouragement and so many kind reviews that people did beforehand, and just really awesome stuff. Yeah, so the poetry community is really great. I love the YA community too, but sometimes with the YA community, it can feel a little mean girlsy, like, hey, but then something goes bad and it's like, okay, bye. Like in poetry, there's nothing at stake. So like, we're all just like, we write poems. This is awesome. And just, yeah.
So I tend to stay off Twitter a lot of Twitter for the YA community or like nowadays for just books in general.
Yeah.
It gets they get really touchy.
Really? I've never encountered that.
Laurie knows nothing about that.
Sure, Laurie knows nothing about that one at all.
Yeah, I've got blockers for my social media on my computer, and I have it so that my husband only knows the password, so I can't go on social media and then just live there. He's got it, so it's got like an hour timer, so then I'm like, okay, I do like all my social media promotion in blocks, which is actually really good for my mental health. I feel like I'm a lot less, up and down, especially because I still don't have my second YA book out because my journey has been a complete dumpster fire. And so, every time I be online, it's like, okay, somebody from our debut group has gotten like their millionth deal. And so is like, I wrote this book in like 3 weeks and now it's on the New York Times bestseller list. And just I love you guys and I hate you so much at the same time. And I'm a loser. And just like, it wasn't helpful. So I go on like once a week, once every other week, once a month. I don't even know. And I do all my business, and I really view it as like business, what I do, and then I get off, and then I just try and write, and I'm much more productive that way. I'm much happier that way.
Yeah.
Just highly recommended.
I know so many people that their partners are the gatekeeper, the social media gatekeeper.
It works out really well. Yeah, like because then you can be held accountable. Because I know if it was just me, I would hack around it any way I could. But he knows the password. I don't. I'm just like, can you sign me on to social media? And I like it that way. I asked him to do it that way, and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah.
See, we have a write-in question. Allie wants to know, do you have a favorite poet? And that hers is Robert Frost and Edgar Allan Poe.
Those are great poets. I always fluctuate with who my favorite poet is. I'm trying to think if there's somebody recently I've read that I really love. I usually go to Kaveh Akbar and Ocean Vuong. Those are two poets that just bring me such joy when I read their work. They're contemporary poets, and if you haven't heard their work and you want to get into poetry, check them out.
Do you have a favorite poet, Laurie?
I hold poets in very high esteem because I have a hard time really understanding poetry sometimes. So it's kind of I kind of idolize poets. So no, not yet. I'm hoping to someday though.
We will show you the ways. And give you some poets.
Be my gateway, Meg. Please be my gateway.
I think growing up, I was addicted to the old movies and stuff of Anne of Green Gables. So I got addicted to Alfred Lord Tennyson and The Lady of Shalott. Hey, I had like most of like the first 8 couplets. I had all that memorized once upon a time. Yeah. I mean, you don't get much more obsessed than actually like trying to memorize the stuff.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go with Robert Frost, but I feel like I don't know enough I don't know enough about poetry to really make a decision, but I'll go with Robert.
I got the Robert Frost poem from Twilight tattooed on the back of my left leg.
Go.
Excellent.
What is it? Fire and Ice, I think is what it's called. That's in the beginning of... Oh God, it's been so long since I've read those books. I think it's in the beginning of Eclipse.
Yeah, it's been so long.
Yeah.
It's been a while. I gotta reread her books before the new one comes out.
Right?
There's a new one coming out. What?
Yeah. Oh,
You didn't
Meg, you gotta see
know?
the cover. It's got this pomegranate. It's the sexiest cover ever. It's this like succulent pomegranate.
It's the one that she was gonna come out with that is
so
Twilight
brilliant.
from Edward's point of view. And then it was leaked, so then she decided not to come out with it. And I'm really kind of hoping that because this has so much, PR and stuff around it, and it's already been pre-ordered like a million times, I'm hoping that she decides to actually come back with like furthering the story. I want something after that, and maybe book 2 to the host, because you left us all hanging. Come on. Don't do that.
It's definitely the sexiest piece of fruit I've ever seen on a cover. You gotta check it out.
Oh God.
It should have a warning label on it. It's that sexy.
My goodness.
It is.
Good to know.
I want to know why they chose the pomegranate, though.
Because it's sexy fruit, and it's Edward.
But why a pomegranate? Well, I mean, if you think about it in that aspect, it kind of makes sense, because the pomegranate was supposed to be like the fruit from the tree of life within Greek mythology and stuff.
Oh, okay.
So that makes sense, because he's immortal.
Is it because didn't the first one have an apple on it?
Yeah.
To kind of interact with that.
Yeah.
Well, kind of. I mean, if you think of like the apple of the tree, like the tree of knowledge type thing, and then what was on the next one? I don't even. What were on these books? I don't even remember. It's been so long.
So, Meg, what are you working on right now? Are you working on YA at the same time that you're working on poetry?
So yeah, I'm not really writing poems right now very often. I've got another collection that I'm gonna try and figure out what I want to do with. I just finished edits for a YA that I'm sending around, fingers crossed. I'm playing with that middle grade novel in verse. And I'm trying to rewrite Lotus for the 500th time.
I love that book.
Yeah. If it ever comes out, I'd like to see if it's still Lotus to you. There's this work in progress I've been working on. That's my horrible second book. And
it's not horrible.
It's horrible.
Horrible.
It's a dumpster fire. But Laurie has been so encouraging through all of it. I have complained so much about the whole process and just been like, I'm dying, Laurie. I hate publishing, Laurie. I'm never going to find another agent again, Laurie. And you've just been my cheerleader and believed in me. And I am so grateful for your existence.
Can I speak about it in vague terms, in like super vague terms?
Yeah, okay. Totally.
This book has one of the best depictions of online bullying that I've ever encountered. I mean, it's raw. It's raw. It's not like, let's pretty it up. It's like really what online bullying is like. Not the pretty version.
Ooh, we should talk then, because with talking to all these authors and stuff, I went through my bookish folder, and I have one where the girl gets tired of all the bullying, so she fakes her own death and pins it on her bullies.
Ooh, I'm intrigued.
But it's like through the entire book, of course you know now, but like through the entire book, you don't know if she's actually dead or if she's still alive, because the book is still in her point of view for most of it. So
that's interesting.
It's like, is it a ghost story or is it not?
I love that kind of thing where you're trying to figure out what's really happening.
Right.
And the narrator's reliable.
I love an unreliable narrator. I've just gotten into that. I didn't even know what that was when I started writing. I've learned so many things.
Just hasn't done really well, though, because I've read a few books in the past that it wasn't done very well. And then the blurb of the book was just completely wrong.
You know what? There's probably a lot of people out there that are like I was before I started writing. I don't know if one of you wants to explain what a book with an unreliable narrator is, and maybe give an example if you can think of one.
So an unreliable narrator is something, well, like say it's a ghost story. A lot of them I've read are ghost stories where you don't know if the person is actually like, okay, am I actually seeing this ghost, or are they just crazy, or is something else going on? Stuff like that. So you can't really trust what this person is telling you and seeing because they don't know themselves if it's actually going on.
Yeah, and it can be in a lot of ways. I think you're right that a lot of them are something supernatural or ghosty. It can also just be that they're perceiving things a certain way, and as you hear from other characters, you realize that they had a very biased perspective of how they were interpreting events, and actually the situation is very, very different. So I think it's interesting like that, because when it's done well, the protagonist or the point of view of a book is leading you and guiding you as a reader, and you kind of by default trust it. So I think it's really cool when a book can subvert our expectations and make us feel like we really believe that protagonist. That's the thing, you've got to really believe them. And so if you're trying to set these, you have to like balance setting seeds of what the truth is. So when it's turned, you go, oh my goodness, that's shocking, but it also makes sense because it was earned, instead of just like, now random plot twist and we didn't see that coming, and so then we feel kind of betrayed. So I think it's a tool that I've tried and I haven't really succeeded super great at it. So I think it's something that it's not super easy to do, but it's really great if it's done well.
I've seen people use it in certain mental health books as well, where people have been diagnosed with schizophrenia and all that stuff. Because then, of course, you really can't trust whatever they're seeing because you automatically know, okay, this could be it. This may not be it. But Allie actually said that Hades and Persephone is strongly represented by a pomegranate, which, of course, because Persephone eats half the pomegranate, so that she has to spend half her time above and then below. So that makes sense for that book as well.
Interesting.
All the cool things and how they correlate with each other.
Symbolism.
Yes, symbolism. So your next book that you are quoting to people, is it another fantasy? Is it computer-based? Is it something else completely different?
So it's super contemporary. There's no magic in it. I really want to get back to something with some fantastical element. I've not been able to figure out how to get back into that world. I've got a bunch of ideas, and I've not sunk my teeth into something enough. But right now, the things that I'm working on and I'm sending out are all super contemporary. A lot of mental health. I think they all have mental health components. That's a big thing that I've been working on a lot. And this one, the one that I'm sending out right now, is largely about anxiety.
Nice.
Yeah.
I really liked Lotus too, because there was, I won't say anything specific, but there was an element of that in there too. And so often people that are actually bullied in real life, they're not they're not, speaking as a person who was bullied in junior high, they're not usually the people who are flawless or aren't quirky at all, or I don't know, they just, I just felt like that book was a pretty realistic depiction of bullying, as opposed to something you might see on a Netflix special, where it's just kind of a person that actually would fit in quite well in most high schools or junior highs as the protagonist. A lot of people that are bullied don't fit in. And I just really liked that honest depiction. It felt very real to me.
Oh, thank you,
Well,
Laurie.
cyberbullying really sucks because they're cyberbullying, you can write whatever you want, online, and you may never see this person in real life. So it kind of takes out some of the risks for the person that is bullying the other person.
Well, I really like that about the book too, is because it really got across how online culture can really magnify bullying in a way that didn't exist when I was in junior high. It really can just ramp it up to just this insane level.
Well, like one person will say something and everyone will jump in on it and escalate it in a way that is just, when you hear about these things happen, or when you see it, or when you experience it, it's kind of like, this is a joke, right? This is like something out of The Simpsons or some TV show, like in a commentary, and then you're like, wait, no, this is really happening. And it's insane. I think there's so many good intentions with a lot of the online stuff, but it's like you said, the anonymity creates power. And it's a place where people can say something without thinking first of, is this really edifying? Is this helpful? Is this constructive? They just like word vomit their feelings, and that can really have consequences, and it can really escalate into a dangerous way.
Oh, I know that.
I think you really nailed the passive aggressive aspect of that too. I thought, people can sometimes kind of frame their bullying in this almost positive way. So my vote is obviously I like that book. I hope that you keep going with it someday.
Well, it is. People talk about their book. I can't remember the term people use, but like the book I wrote before getting published is kind of the book that taught me how to write or whatever. I've written a lot of other books, so I thought like, I'd already done that. I don't need that. This book has taught me so much about writing.
Okay.
And the last agent I had, I consider her my free MFA program because she just pushed me so hard. It really challenged me to think about it. And I'm such a stronger writer for it. And the stuff I'm writing now is way better than what I was writing a couple of years ago. So it's been painful. It's been frustrating, but I'm really grateful for it. And I'm grateful for the time that it's not rushing things, that I can work more at my pace and build up a bunch of stuff that I'm really happy with. So.
There's probably a good point you're making for all the people watching this that are budding writers, that, none of the writing is really wasted. None of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I used to always think like, well, I have to literally use all of it or it's wasted. But what you learn from it is valuable, and it can feel like a waste. But this last thing I wrote it in such a much shorter time than any other book. I edited it in a much shorter time than any other book. And it's way stronger. So like it's more efficient in the long run because I've learned how to do stuff better. So yeah, it's like you said, nothing's wasted.
Wow. So with all the quarantine and you're teaching online, so are you you're teaching adults, right? I think Laurie said that you were doing college.
Yes. Yeah.
University of Maryland you're at still? Or?
So now I'm at Anne Arundel Community College.
Okay.
Yeah, but I did teach at UMD for a while, and I really, really enjoyed that. They have a program just for writers called the Jimenez Porter Writers House, which I did as a student, and it's literally the coolest thing ever, where you live in a dorm with a bunch of other writers and you do things. So, like, yeah, I love Writers House.
Wow. So what have you been reading lately?
Oh, I'm always so bad at this question. Because I never...
Or favorite books.
Yeah, I try and put everything in Goodreads that I'm reading. Gosh. Yeah, and then I never actually remember the names. Okay, so I'm going to look at my YA shelf here, and I'm just going to read names of stuff I've read recently that I love.
What stuff you like?
Yeah, The Nowhere Girls by Amy Reed. I love that. The Staunchly Color of After by Emily X.R. Pan. Anything by Goldie Madofsky. I hope she has something come out again soon. She did Kill the Boy Band and No Good Deed. I love them so hard. Lamar Giles had Not So Pure and Simple that came out this year. As somebody that grew up in the church, I love it because it's not just purely church is bad, which is 99% of YA about church culture, which is necessary. It's important. There's a lot of horrible things people have done in the church. But I liked this because it wasn't about that, but authentically created like youth group culture and stuff that I was just like, I was there. I feel that. So I really was happy about that book. And Tiffany Jackson's Monday's Not Coming. I mean, anything by her, but Monday's Not Coming, I really, really love. So those are a few.
Awesome. Yeah. Want to check out for like the whole church culture and stuff, or will they go to a churchy school? Is Heretics Anonymous. It is so hilarious.
Oh, I should check that one out.
Like I went from reading an EARC of that to ordering a finished copy because it was just so funny.
Oh, good to know. Yeah.
I found my copy of it, and apparently, like, wherever it made me laugh, I have, like, Post-its throughout the whole thing. It's like, what are these?
And I kind of agree with you that some of the depictions of, religion have gotten a little one note and lacking a nuance.
I think that's well said because, I think it's important to see all experiences. I'm not saying erasure a certain experience, but, it's one note. I see almost only that. And when it's portrayed, it's usually very black and white and not nuanced. It's not people, it's caricatures. And that's what I'm pointing as a writer. I want to see complex depictions of people.
And a lot of it's not.
And church culture is so complex, and religious culture is so complex, any religion. So I think it's way more interesting to read a book that acknowledges the complexity, the good, the bad, the ugly. And one day I want to write about that, but it's really hard. So while I'm frustrated by the one-noteness, I also understand that this stuff is really hard to write about.
Yeah.
And that's particularly why I loved Not So Pure and Simple, because I think he did a really good job kind of tackling it in a nuanced way.
There's so much stuff out there. Like I just got finished reading, the Halfling series that was redone by Heather Birch, and that's all nothing but angels. And it talks about God and heavenly angels, halflings, and everything. But she does it in a way that it's not preachy.
Mm-hmm.
It's about God and all that stuff, but it's not preachy. If I walked up to them, they're not going to smite me type thing. I'll still be safe. But she does really good with those. I mean, it's that fine line of when you're trying to do stuff that deals with one specific religion or more than one religion, where you're being objective, but you're not crossing any lines type thing.
And honestly, I think that's not just a issue for religion, but any kind of issues books even.
Right.
Like I've seen a lot of preachy books, and they weren't about religion necessarily, but they preached at me. And I was like, if I want a sermon, I'm going to go listen to a sermon. I'm not going to read a YA book. So I think it's a challenge for all of us as writers. We all care about certain things.
Right.
And we should. There's a lot of important stuff to talk about, but we really need to remember when we're writing a story, don't let the characters and the environment show that message as opposed to preaching it to people, because it's going to be more meaningful to the reader. It's going to last with them much more than being preached at.
Yeah, there was one out a couple of years ago that it has a girl in it that she finds out she's pregnant, and it's immaculate conception. It's hilarious. Like, this little old lady shows up where she's working and tells her that she's pregnant. And she's just thinking she is just completely off her rocker. Like, okay, yeah, sure, I'm still a virgin, but yeah, I'm pregnant, sure. And it goes through the good and the bad of the people from her town that are rooting for her and accepting that this is happening, and then you have the other people that, oh no, she's a heretic, and this is bad, and all this other stuff, and they need to take the baby away from her and all this. I really hope she comes out with a book too, because I mean, that book completely blew me away, because you think, okay, that's going to be completely preachy and stuff, but it wasn't. It was so good.
It's all how you tackle something, and I think what you said of having people that root for her and root against her is important. And it made me think of J.C. Davis's Jesus Was Here, which is a book. It's a middle grade. I adore it. And it's about this small town in Texas where this cheese that has the face of Jesus in it shows up, and the whole town becomes this religious pilgrimage spot, in such an absurdist way. And so it's funny, but I like that it doesn't just caricaturize the idea. She really shows the idea of belief, and how there's characters that believe in the supernatural, and then those that are skeptical of it. But she uses a really silly situation to kind of navigate that, kind of not unlike what you're describing in your story.
I like that. That sounds so funny.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic.
What is the title of that again?
Jesus Was Here.
Jesus. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Wonderful. Yeah.
That's hilarious. I love we were scanning in all the cozy mystery books last week, and I'm just cracking up laughing every couple of seconds. What is going on over there? I'm they're funny. The cozy mystery titles are some of
I love them. The cozy mystery titles.
They're so funny. And
yes, they're funny.
If you need, they are punny. They are not funny. They are just punny. And if you need a laugh, you are having a bad day, just go to wherever the cozy mysteries are in your bookstore, or look it up on Goodreads or whatever, and just read through the titles. You don't even need to read the book. You just read the titles, because man, they are good.
Well, the other good genre for titles is Amish romance.
Oh yes, Amish romance are just wonderful for so many horrible reasons. Weiss did a documentary on Amish romances on Netflix, I think it was Vice. And it was kind of glorious. They like interviewed Amish people and were like, "Do you think these are realistic?"
I used to live in Amish country. Like you would go, I would be sitting there at the computer doing like schoolwork, and you would have these Amish girls, and they're like Mennonites and Old Order Amish because I'm from Ohio. Okay, and they are taking out like the max amount of like the men with their shirts off romance books and checking them out. Okay,
Awesome.
like,
so many questions.
That is awesome.
Oh, that's a wonderful image.
Like they're like teenagers, and they are taking out the max amount of books they can take out at one time, and it is all nothing but those kinds of books.
They were prepping for Rumspringa. It sounds like.
It is crazy.
Good titles, though. Good titles in that genre. Shout out to all the people writing Amish romance. You have some awesome titles going on.
I think I've actually read some Amish romance, but it was like YA Amish romance.
I'm saving some genres. Like I haven't really gotten into, mystery yet. I'm excited about that. I haven't really gotten into thrillers yet because I used to read nonfiction exclusively until like my kids got me into fantasy, and then all this.
Are you still reading the same 5 books you were reading last week?
I
or did you finally get through some of them?
I read like 10, Jessica. Nobody reads at your speed, all right? Do not judge. Do not judge me.
Yeah, because this weekend, I was updating all the numbers, and I'm like, holy crap, I read like 5 books this weekend.
Yeah, you're Olympic level.
And one I read twice because my Kindle, like, I was talking to Heather Birch and last Friday, and she's talking about something happened in the book. I'm like, wait a second, that didn't happen. And I'm thinking my Kindle file was messed up. And I'm like, well, wait a second. It went from like this way to this way, and it like skipped a slew of chapters. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to reread this book again.
Wow.
So Meg, what's your main genre? Like if you had to pick a genre to stay in, to read, what would you read?
To read? I like reading everything. I grew up in a house of books, and I was encouraged to read all the things. So I usually like to read a little bit. I always try and have one poetry book, one fiction, and one nonfiction that I work through at least at a time. I usually pick up more because I can't stay focused. But I like anything good. Like, that sounds kind of critical, but anything that, I don't know, there's got to be something that engages me. Strong characters, something at stake, something that teaches me. If I feel like I'm not really learning by reading it, I'm kind of like meh. I think I have a lot less patience for books than I used to, so it's really got to give me something early that makes me invested. But I really read everything. I read a lot of YA and middle grade right now. I'm reading more middle grade because now I'm trying to write middle grade, and I'm enjoying that a lot.
You're like the opposite of most authors that I talk to,
Really?
where that if they're writing in one genre, they stay away from it. They won't read it. They'll read something else completely. Yeah. They'll read something else completely. So if they're writing like a young adult fantasy, then they'll read like adult stuff or middle grade stuff. They'll stay away from young adult fantasy. I mean, I kind of understand it because I don't want to accidentally like duplicate something. But I would never be able to write or read ever again if I did that because I read everything.
Well, and everything we write is inspired by what we consume. So, I mean, no matter what, you're going to be influenced by what you read.
Well, there's been a lot of books out there where, like, I'll read it, and then I got, like, the chance to talk with them, and I'm like, oh, well, have you read this story? And they're like, no, I've never read that. And I'm like, okay, well, your book is, like, almost exactly like that book with very few tweaks in it. Like, the Delirium series by Lauren Oliver is very similar to the Program series by Susan Young. But Susan Young never read the Delirium series. And then both of those are closely matched to the Match series by, Ali Condi or something? Because they all deal with, like, almost the same thing. It's like emotions.
That's exactly why you should read in your genre. Yeah. So you go, oh, gee, this is similar to what I'm writing. Why is what I'm writing different? What am I bringing to the table? And if you can't explain that, don't write that book. Like, I don't know.
It kind of worked out, though, because, like, I've read all 3 of those series. And Match I couldn't get through. Delirium, I read it. I kind of liked it. I do have the newer covers of them because I fell in love with them. I'm a cover person. But the other one from Susan Young was so much better than the other 2. So it's kind of weird. Like a couple years ago, I had gotten 2 books by 2 separate authors that were both about the fates. And in one book, she was supposed to help people, and then the other one, she wasn't. She was supposed to hide it. And so it was like 2 things around the same thing, but done differently. And they were so, I cannot remember the authors of them or the titles, but they were both amazing.
Well, that's the great thing about writing is, I mean, we all bring something to the table. So I wouldn't ever worry about writing, like copying somebody. So if I do read something and I feel like it's similar to what I was tackling, then it really makes me ponder, why do I want to tell this? And I think that's good thinking, because then it makes it what I'm writing stronger, because then I have to really justify what I'm bringing, why it matters to me, and why I've got to tell it.
Right. So you should do that for your, what is it, Lotus? You can do it. You can do it.
Well, I mean, I've rewritten it like 20 plus times at this point.
Oh, goodness.
So I reason if I can't get away from it, like there's definitely a reason why I'm writing it. And it keeps morphing, but I think each time it morphs closer and closer to what I've been trying to say the whole time and just haven't been able to say.
Right.
I've learned a lot about myself and digging into myself to figure out why I care about a book and what I'm trying to say when I'm writing a book.
Oh.
Yeah.
I love the Cary Grant memes in that book are hysterical.
Oh, girl, I have been binging Cary Grant movies during this quarantine. Every night a different one. And it's actually, I've been telling myself it's for research, for rewriting this, because I wanted to be more of that interaction. And it's been very helpful because I've been hearing Prue and Lotus's conversations as if, like, while I'm watching, I'm imagining it's like I'm with them hanging out, like doing live commentary of the movies. And so I think that's going to make it stronger. Because can you believe this, Laurie? Like, people have been reading it and telling me that they can't get the characters, which is like the most painful thing that somebody could tell me, is that they don't get my character, because my characters are my people. Like, they're real to me. And
well, you have the wrong readers then. It's a very good book. I'm sorry.
Well, I don't think I've had the wrong readers. I think it's pushed me to clarify certain things on the page, but I'm happy you seem to get them. So
I love this book, so I'm not gonna pretend that I don't.
Aww. So is there any books coming out this year that you can't wait to get your hands on?
Oh, geez. That's hard because I recently got a bunch of ARCs at a conference in the fall. So I've kind of been digging into 2020 releases.
Now, what are your conferences, though? Are they poetry conferences? Are they fiction conferences? What type of conferences?
Everything. I do a little bit of both. Of course, everything was canceled for the spring. But usually my springs, I've got a conference every other week or something.
Wow.
Talking about craft. Well, one release I'm excited about is Liz Acevedo's Clap When You Land. I love her. We were in the same MFA program, so that's like my one bragging right. It's like I went to school with her. Yeah, so that.
What's the title again? Could you just say it again?
Clap When You Land. She wrote The Poet X and With the Fire on High. Yeah, and so this is her third book.
All right.
It actually, I shouldn't say coming out, because I think it literally did just come out. I'm just out of the loop right now on social media because I'm not going on very often. But I think it did technically come out a few weeks ago, so I need to get my hands on that.
Poet X is totally in prose, right?
The Poet X is a novel in verse.
Okay.
With the Fire on High. Thank you. Oh, that's a different cover than the one I like.
Yeah, it just came out back on the 5th.
Beautiful cover.
Yeah, okay. I was like, I feel like it just came out.
Wow.
Hot Key Books. I don't think I've heard of that publisher before.
With the Fire on High is prose, but the Poet X.
Oh.
We were in the poetry program together.
That's what is the difference between here's the other cover.
Yeah, that's the one I've seen before.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Laurie?
What's the difference between prose and poetry?
That is a complicated
okay.
question. I mean, it's short. Like, I guess the way I see it is that prose typically, well, and especially fiction, carries a narrative, and that's kind of the structure that it focuses on. There's a beginning, a middle, and end. There's a problem and a resolution. Poetry is more, I describe it for my students as kind of a rising narrative. So you know, in fiction, you probably saw the chart where it's in literature where you have the problem, the climax, conclusion. For poetry, it's just a line that goes straight up where you're building details and you get to an aha moment, a realization. That's my unofficial explanation of, because you could say superficial things like, well, poems are shorter and they've got line breaks and stanzas, but those are kind of superficial. Like, I mean, those are tools you use as a poet, but ultimately there's a reason why I write certain things as poems and other things as fiction. And I come to poems when I've got an emotional experience. Like I've been writing I think I've been writing a novel in verse right now because of all the chaos going on right now. Yeah. And I think there's things I'm feeling and things that are overwhelming me that make me feel like I can't write this in prose. I have to write a poem to explain how I feel. And so writing these poems from this girl that's overwhelmed by a world that doesn't understand her neurodiversity, like that just, I can only capture that in a poem. And then in prose, that's much more of telling a story and a journey and having something to say in a different way. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah. They're different tools. I didn't think they're both great mediums. They're just for different times and different purposes.
Right. That's cool. All right. Well, we have 4 minutes left. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, a question. The Poet X. I've been meaning to read that. You've probably read that, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Liz is a really talented poet.
Are all of her books like that in poetry, or?
So the Poet X is in verse. With the Fire on High is prose, and I believe Clap When You Land is a novel in verse. I have not read it yet since it just came out.
Yeah, I've heard really great things about the Poet X. People rave about that.
Although I love her covers.
Aren't they beautiful?
They're so pretty. Makes me crave fruit now. Now I want fruit.
That and the new Twilight book.
Right.
What I think is cool about the Poet X is the purpose of the form, because it's about a girl learning to use poetry as a way to find her voice. And I think, she's just got the best covers. And I think I was really inspired by that because it shows how using each form is purposeful. Kind of what I was thinking.
That she's got like words in her hair.
Yeah, isn't that neat?
That is so cool looking. It's like across her face.
So I think she used the medium very well.
Right.
Because it's about a poet learning to use her voice. And so I think sometimes we go to certain mediums and don't always use them super purposefully. So I think hers is a really great example of how you can use something like a novel in verse really effectively.
I have to check those out. I think I have Fire on High buried in my massive hoard of EARCs.
The never-ending pile.
Pretty much. Never ends. It's never going to end. I keep getting stuff in the mail to review. Which is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's a very good thing. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I will be checking out this tonight. And then, guys, of course, join us tomorrow at 7 p.m. to talk with Erin Beatty and her series.
Rocket Scientist.
It's like, and I am still, that is bugging me so much that I gave both book 1 and book 2 and book 3 5 stars, and I have nothing.
It's because you read 10 books a day, Jessica.
Yeah, nothing.
Too many books, not enough time.
I actually remember the books I read.
But normally I could at least tell you something. I mean, even if it's just that, I don't know, the neighbor had a cat named Fred or something, or the cat saved the day. And I've got absolutely nothing at all.
Well, that's okay. I'll listen because I love her book.
I'm going to read that one tonight, so I'll have at least one book down.
Meg, thank you for coming on this. It's great to meet you, like, visually.
Yes. I hope one day we can meet in person once all
this horrible COVID is over.
Yeah. But thank you so much for having me.
I would love that. So
yeah.
It's all COVID's fault.
Yeah.
So you guys just need to we'll just, I don't know, create our own bookish event and everybody can just come to Florida.
That sounds good. Have your own convention, Jessica.
Yeah.
Nobody comes to Florida. They go to Miami, which is 4 hours away from me.
Oh.
Yeah. I was
You make the event, I'll be there. If I can be.
Right?
All right, I'll catch you online, Meg.
Sounds good.
Great seeing you. Thanks
guys for watching. We'll be back tomorrow.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Meg.
Thank you.